Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success, and in our current climate, maximize safety while providing people with fresh food. Farmers markets are essential. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast. On today's episode of Tent Talk, we're going to chat with Sheree Moratto and Stephanie Jokich of the Chicago Farmers Market Collective about markets working together. I am one of your hosts, Bridget Myers. I've spent years as an on-site farmers market manager, and I'm the education coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Kat Fields-White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active Farmers Market Manager, founder of Farmers Market Pros, and host of the Farmers Market Pros Community and Intense, the Farmers Market Conference.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead, Tent Talk producer, marketing director for Farmers Market Pros, and logistics coordinator for Intense, the Farmers Market Conference 2021, which is coming to you live online March 15th through 18th. And just want to remind you not to forget that we extended early bird pricing through the end of this month, so pause this episode and go register now.
Thanks so much for tuning in. This week, we are sharing an awesome conversation we had with Sheree Moratto of the Glenwood Sunday Market in Chicago and a coordinator of the Chicago Farmers Market Collective, and collective member Stephanie Jokich of the Southwood Farmers Market. Their organization brings more than 20 unrelated Chicago area markets together to share best practices and address challenges. One note, we recorded this conversation with Sheree and Stephanie a few weeks ago, so you may hear some references to the February conference. Remember that Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, will now be live online March 15th through the 18th. Welcome, Sheree and Stephanie.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm like off screen.
I know you're.
I'm always like.
I need like a wider screen. Hello.
So you know who you're talking to.
So we just wanted to start by just hearing a little bit about both of you, how you ended up in the farmers market business. It's kind of a wacky industry to be in, so we're always curious what brought you here.
So maybe start with Sheree and let her tell us a little bit about herself, and then we'll go to Stephanie.
Sure. Well, I mean, I fell into it like many people do, the farmers market world. I had spent most of my time in nonprofit management, administering private schools, things like that. And during the 2008 economic downturn, that job kind of disappeared, and I was at a loss for what to do. I had a neighbor who kept asking me to join this committee of neighborhood people to start a farmers market, and I was like, I don't think so. Not really.
That's weird.
I grew up on a farm. I moved to Chicago to get away from a farm. I'm not going to start a farmer's market. But, you know, she kind of guilted me into going to a meeting. And I went to this meeting in 2009. And this lovely man stood up and started talking about how they were going to start this farmer's market, and they had this logo. And I was like, okay, they got a logo. They're further along than I thought. And then I started asking questions because they kept all going on and on about this logo. And it turned out, I was like, well, do you have a date to start? They're like, no. Like, do you have any farmers? No. Do you have an application? No. Do you know where it's going to be? No.
But we have a logo.
I
anything besides a logo.
I walked out of that meeting. I was like, darn it, I'm stuck. Because I couldn't not make it happen. So so I joined the group of neighborhood volunteers. And you know, I could go on and on about the whole thing, but it was really the idea of an economic development organization, which is where I work now, and do a variety of things. So the market was this idea they had to kind of bring commercial corridor revitalization to one of our kind of skanky side streets. And thought, hey, if we had a market there, maybe people would actually go to the businesses that are there. But all the volunteers were all about food access and local food. And I grew up on a farm, so I too was about local food and farming. So the worlds collided, and we actually opened the market in 2010. And so I've been, I was first the manager, now the director. And it's a producer only, food only, tiny little market.
Awesome.
How big a market, Sheree? When you say
We
tiny?
are on a half a block of a Chicago city
Oh, okay.
street, so in normal times. We
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
be there this year because it was too tiny. A maximum of 25 vendors,
Okay,
and
so it's pretty good. Yeah.
you know,
We don't regard that as tiny. We regard that as small. That's still a small. We actually
Okay,
have seen
small.
a couple of markets with 6 vendors, so
Yes.
that's
yeah,
tiny.
That's true. Good,
And so-
good point.
Who's your umbrella organization that you work for?
It's a Rogers Park Business Alliance,
Great.
and that's the name of the neighborhood that we're in, Rogers Park, which is on the very, very far northernmost point of Chicago along the lakefront.
Ooh, nice.
Pretty.
Cool. I'm sure that's very cold right now.
Yes.
That's just very cold.
Sounds
That's right.
chilly. Sounds windy.
Chilly. It's about 30.
Yikes.
So Stephanie, how about you?
Yeah, a wacky journey indeed. My story starts with a strawberry, actually. So I also, this story starts in 2008. I graduated college in 2008. There were no jobs.
Yep.
I replied to a
Justine's nodding.
Yeah.
Yep.
I replied to a Craigslist ad, and Kate is now a very dear friend. But Kate is a food and farm photographer, and she was looking for an assistant. So I replied, and that was my first introduction to sustainable agriculture and really the food world on that side of things. I've always worked in hospitality. So we were on a farm one day and we were trying to get the shot of a strawberry, and we were like fumbling around with all this equipment, and it was so hot, and I just had this moment that I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. And that broke open this, I mean, from there I was just kind of obsessed, any documentary I could find about sustainable agriculture and the movement, anything I could get my hands on, I was just a sponge. Flash forward to 2014, I had worked kind of, started building my career, worked a series of jobs, and landed at this 11-room boutique hotel in a mansion in Chicago's South Loop. And at the time, and it was kind of like a kooky place. At the time, we were really struggling with occupancy and visibility, and I knew the South Loop area needed a farmer's market. So I pitched the idea of hosting a farmer's market on the grounds of the property, and we ended up partnering with a community organization, and that's how I met my fellow co-founder, Tina Feldstein. She was running a community organization called the Prairie District Neighborhood Alliance. So we partnered, started the farmers market on site at the mansion, and then I ended up moving to California for a little bit. I worked for a small jam company, worked at several farmers markets there, came back to Chicago, and in 2014 we started the Southwood Farmers Market at a different location at Second Presbyterian Church. Or actually, it was 2015.
Cool. What jam company did you work with? I'm curious.
Blue Chair.
Oh, I don't know that jam
The
company.
Blue Chair.
Are you
What part of
familiar?
California?
Blue Chair
No, what
Jam?
part of California?
Based in Oakland.
Oh,
cool.
awesome. Cool.
Nice.
Cool.
Just curious.
Awesome. So, Sheree and Stephanie, you guys are connected through the Chicago Farmers Market Collective. You want to give us just a quick thumbnail sketch of how that was formed and just the overall mission of that group?
Well, I mean, it was completely unintentional. Let me start by saying that. I didn't mean for it to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, like in a lot of places, the markets that Stephanie and I do are independent. And then there are also markets that are operated by the city. So the city has a variety of markets, like I actually just counted up today. They currently have 9 markets, and then one huge market that you probably heard of called Maxwell Street, which is beyond a market in every way possible. So they operate throughout the city, and then there's a bunch of us independents as well. But in order to be an independent market in Chicago, you have to play by the city's rules, of course. And in order to do that, and especially to operate on city property like my market does on a city street, you've got to jump through a million hoops. And, so we, from 2010 until 2018, every year those hoops would change a little bit. But I would somehow figure it out and get another permit and go back out there and do it again for another season. And kind of in the middle of the 2018 season, I just was starting to get mixed messages in every possible way. I couldn't get a clear sense of how to pay the Department of Transportation to close the street. Our police department was saying I had to have trucks blocking the street, but nobody else around town seemed to need to have trucks to block the street from the terrorists that were going to come, knock us all down. So I didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do. I was kind of grasping at straws. And the tradition in Chicago had been that farmers market managers do not talk to each other.
Yeah.
There is no,
It's still like that here.
It's still like that.
Well, to an extent.
Very antagonistic, totally contentious. I'm the best and you stink, that sort of a thing.
Yeah. Don't steal my vendors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course the vendors would play off of that too, like, Logan Square does it this way, or South Loop does it that way. And you had no way of knowing if that was true or not because you didn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm just gonna, bite the bullet and keep going. Suddenly this one day, I got this random email from the person who was then doing another market in town. And she was like, I know you don't know me and I know I don't know you, but I'm having a terrible time getting the city to come tow the cars away on Sunday mornings when I'm trying to run this market. And I was like, oh my gosh, so am I. And she was like, I heard this other guy is also having a problem. And I was like, oh my God, what if we got together and talked about it? She was like, oh my God, do you think we could?
So taboo.
Bring us all together, the towing of the cars.
But aren't you a Hatfield and I'm a McCoy?
I know. I had met this other guy one time and I was like, well, I'll just reach out to him. I don't know what's going to happen. So I did. And the three of us decided we were going to have coffee.
Ooh.
We were going to meet and have coffee, the three of us. And I was like scared. So we picked a place and we went there. I was telling Stephanie this a little earlier today because she had never heard this stupid story. And we didn't really even know what we looked like.
Yeah.
So I'm walking up to random people in this coffee shop going like, are you so-and-so? Are you so-and-so?
You guys didn't make a plan like everybody bring a red carrot? No?
I think we were so nervous, like, what if somebody sees us? It's like high school or junior high or something. Well, anyway, it turned out we had a million things in common. So surprising, wouldn't you say? Turns out, same crazy stuff I was dealing with. They were dealing with variations on that same theme. So by the time we were finished with our coffee, we were like, we should do this again. And I was like, what if we invited a couple of other people?
What?
And they were like, you are so brave. Oh my gosh. And so I just have emails from people, of course, because I'd been at conferences. You know how you're nice to each other when you're at a conference.
Yeah.
And then you go home and you're like,
they're the worst.
Did you believe they did it? Anyway, so I just sent out this email to about 10 people saying, hey, there's going to get together at my office. If you'd like to come, we're just going to talk about the city permitting process because it seems confusing to people. And people showed up and that's how it started. So it's literally, there was no big plan. There was nobody going like, we should have this or we should do that. It was literally just like, I don't understand what is happening here. And neither do these people. And then it just kind of grew out of that.
that's amazing.
That's awesome.
And now how many markets participate in this little collective?
In this local, we have 28 independent markets.
That's a big collective. That's
Big
not so little.
collective.
And then we have the 9 city markets because we work together now.
Oh, that's good.
Wow. Does the city know?
Yes. In fact, Alyssa Baum, who's a kind of lead on the city markets, is going to be on our panel at the conference, the Intense Conference.
So excited.
Ooh, I like that strategy. We haven't actually accepted their proposal, but she's just going to say it out loud.
Well, if you don't love this. You could have had Alyssa Baum here as well.
It would have been great.
It would have been
Way
really
to
good.
jump the gun, Sheree.
So anyway, 28 independents and then the 9 city markets, including Maxwell Street. And then,
That's good.
like, as soon as we started actually having regular meetings, which originally got into a rhythm of every other month, then all these kind of other organizations wanted to get involved, like the Policy Advisory Council and the Illinois Farmers Market Association and Catholic Charities and the Illinois Department of Human Services and the University of Illinois.
So do you have formal alliances with any of those groups at this point?
They come to our meetings.
Oh, interesting. That's great. I'm curious, just when you're talking about how you got to this point, it's interesting because some cities do own farmers markets, but a lot of cities don't. A lot of them, it's other organizations that do it. Our city, for instance, doesn't own any farmers markets. They don't operate any farmers markets. Did you have a sense that while you're competing with each other, you were also competing with the city who was issuing you permits? Was that part of the problem, that they saw you as a threat to their markets?
I don't think they see us as a threat, but Stephanie is actually in an interesting position. So I'll throw it over to you in a sec, Stephanie, to talk about Printers Row. But
Sure.
no, the main thing was that the city, like many places, had no way of working with farmers markets other than to think of them and treat them like a special event. So like a rib fest or a street fair. So it was you had to go through that same process of, major, massive, sending certificates of interest. I mean, all very well and good, but since it was the only way they could deal with us, because they didn't have another criteria through which to manage giving us a permit. Sometimes if a market is in a park district, that's a different entity than the city of Chicago. So the park district markets would have to deal with the park district, and the street markets would be dealing with the city. And if you're on private property, then, you'd keep your mouth shut and hope nobody notices. But
we have one of those.
Yeah, but as
us,
things
but
started changing, it used to just kind of be like your alderman could say, hey, I love this farmer's market. They don't have to go through this process. And that changed with the change of administration. So it was just kind of like everything was just becoming more and more and more complex. So it was almost just like we couldn't keep up with each other. Like, for example, I didn't used to have to pay to close the street, but then, cities broke. So then I had to pay to close the street. So then I went to the Department of Transportation to pay to close the street for 25 Sundays. And they were like, sorry, we only know how to do a permit for one day at a time. So you got to come back every week for 25 weeks. And I was like, no, I don't.
I don't and I won't.
You can charge me for every week all at once and add it all up into one big number.
Just takes a calculator.
We can't.
Oh, no.
We can't do that. So, I mean, it took me, I literally had to get my alderperson involved in telling them, yes, you can add it all up and put it on one permit. So it was just it was that sort of communication thing. It wasn't like, we don't want you to exist because we want the city to have a market there. It was more just like, you're a headache because you're asking me to do stuff that doesn't fall into my everyday work.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Stephanie, what's your experience in that?
Well, our market is on private property, and though I've done events that needed street closure and different permits and stuff outside of the market, I kind of know that experience just for one event. We haven't had to go through that just being on private property. So the Southwood Farmers Market is really at an advantage there, which is great. But the city has been so collaborative, even in the beginning, when we started Southwood Farmers Market, but now, so the city starts, kind of smaller farmers markets. And then if it becomes too much for them, or if they can't manage it and want to focus on other initiatives, which is the case this year, they will contact other market managers in the area to see if that particular organization or market would want to take over the city's farmers market. And this happened with a market that is hosted in Printers Row, which is in the South Loop, very close to ours. So they reached out to my co-founder, Tina, and I, and asked if we would be interested in taking over that market. So we'll be taking over 2 markets in the South Loop. So our market is usually held on Thursday evening, and Printers Row will be held now on Saturday morning in 2021. So we're planning on that and collaborating with the city to make that happen.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's been the great thing. This not long after we started meeting, a new person came in to the city, along with some longtime staff of the city as well, who've been working on the city's events and markets. And and that's the Alyssa person that I brought up earlier, tantalizing you. Anyway, she had, she had this initiative, to kind of help all of us communicate better. Everybody wanted to, but just there was no easy way to accomplish it. So with that new energy in the city, and then with our little group of like maybe 8 or 9 people, 8 or 9 markets starting to get together, the question came from her, would it be okay if the city came as well? I was like, yeah, because that's what we're trying to do here, is just clear lines of communication so that we can do better work all the way around. I mean, the point is to get local food into the city, to make it accessible to our communities, to get revenue streams to the farms that are near enough to us to be able to still be operating as farms. And, really that's what we're all about. So it was a natural kind of collaboration from the early days of her coming into the city's work. And then thank heavens, because when we wound up in last March with everything shutting down here in Chicago, like the city's offices have all been closed since March. My office has been closed since March. And there was no opportunity, it appeared, for the farmers markets to open because they were special events. And the city was not, and still is not, giving any permits for special events. It was a very circuitous route to be able to figure out how to open. And so having by then developed this group of 20 plus markets who were accustomed to working with each other, even though it was like on random little projects, like let's all do an Instagram post on August 13th for Farmers Market Week. So yeah, it were like little small steps, but we had developed enough of a rapport and trust among each other so that when we, push came to shove with getting the markets open and trying to figure out a way to do it, everybody had skin in the game. And I think we would not have been able to open this year if it had not been for that. And it was just a lucky, I'd say it was lucky break. Other people say you're psychic, but I just say, it was just, I just couldn't figure out how to get those cars towed.
Right? I'm telling you,
Heaven
one
knows,
thing.
we'll do anything to get cars towed.
It'll bring us all together, getting those cars towed, Lordy.
So we had the experience here, and still do, honestly, of different, we've got a lot of markets all in one area, but they're in ways that the public doesn't see. They're in actual different cities or different districts, or some are on private property, some are not. And so the protocols for dealing with COVID in particular have been really different. So it's very confusing for the farmers and vendors, but also for the public to say, oh, well, I can go to a market 3 miles from you and they can serve food prepared to eat on site. And I can go to this market that's, 15 miles up the road, and they don't have the same restrictions on the number of people that can be inside the market, that kind of thing. It's been very confusing. So I know you said that there were differences in the way permits and things were handled for your different areas and different aldermen's districts and things. What happened with COVID? Do you have a consistent set of protocols?
Yes, we do.
Partly
actually,
because you have the
yes.
organization, or are you running all different kinds of setups?
No, all the city markets are operating within the same parameters. And again, I think those parameters were developed because of the push of this group of strong-willed individuals to get our markets open, whether it was the city markets or the independent markets. We too deal with, I mean, I'm right on the border of the city. So yeah, you can go to Evanston and have a totally different kind of experience, but it was a huge, hugely important, I think, for all of us in the city to be able to say, this is how we operate here. You know, yeah, you could do something different in Park Ridge, but go ahead, Steph.
Oh, I would also like to add that when those protocols were introduced and we were like out in the field, so to speak, you know, enforcing, you know, running our markets according to these rules, issues would come up, and then we could then discuss those issues at our next collective meeting. So as part of the protocol, if someone comes to one of our markets and says, I have a medical condition, I can't wear a mask, we're supposed to let them shop anyway. So I had a situation at my market come up with a customer that let me know that they had a medical condition, and we discussed it at our next collective meeting just to kind of clarify how that works and, you know, how to handle certain situations if it were to come up again. So it was really helpful to have that group of people in support.
I would think it'd be really helpful. I know we, in our area, we've had kind of the same sort of culture that you talked about before your collective started. And I will say that during COVID, we've been at least a small group of us, not every market manager in town, but at least a group of us have really kept in touch with each other. And, you know, I'll be texting somebody and saying, so they're telling me that mom says they can sample on Sundays. Is that true? And she goes, no, Dad, let's stick together on this. So, you know, we've actually been able to establish some communication that we hadn't had before. So that's one of those COVID silver linings that we actually are talking together. So are all of your members in the city of Chicago? Or
yes.
So
that's the only criteria we actually, that's the only criteria
that's what I was going to ask is what the criteria was. So the folks in Evanston are not in your group.
No, and it's not because we don't love everybody from around the city. It's just that we're dealing with a specific environment here.
Yeah.
Like the suburbs around us, and even elsewhere in the state, you know, Illinois is what you call a home rule state. So your municipality can kind of set things in place that maybe the whole state isn't doing. That was one of our big initiatives, right? When the state said that farmers markets were essential businesses, that was something that it, you know, could go to the table with the city in terms of these are grocery stores outside, essential businesses, local food. This is food access. You're messing with people's food supply if you don't let farmers markets open, you know, but then also in order to make that happen, there were all these criteria that needed to be implemented within the city limits based on corporate counsel of the city. But those same things aren't elsewhere. So we're talking apples and bananas, really. It's like maybe the vendors are the same from market to market or similar, but what's happening in our municipality doesn't translate into what's happening outside of the city. So we have encouraged people who want to join, I mean, with the from outside of the city to just start their own group. You know, because it's more important to have the communication flowing than to have a great big huge bunch of people that can't really have an impact on each other or maybe provide the same kind of support, or I don't know, you know, for each other.
Yeah, larger groups are important in their way, but those smaller groups that focus on what's really relevant where you are is also important, because you have a fairly dynamic Illinois Farmers Market Association there.
Absolutely, and we encourage everybody to be involved with the Illinois Farmers Market Association and the Farmers Market Coalition, and you guys. I mean, there's so many great resources nationwide. And I do think that
actually, I was just telling Sheree, I was thinking about how I found out about Tent Talk, and it was Janie from Illinois Farmers Market Association.
We love Janie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
We always wonder, we're like, how did you find us?
And Janie comes to our meetings, you know, I mean, so we kind of, you know, we've developed just a rapport, I think, that is really important, because she can bring things to the table that we need to know from the state perspective. We've
at
got
the same
data
time,
that
you're
she
probably giving her information on what's happening on the ground in Chicago, which is a big group of markets that it would be hard for her to track while she's also keeping track of everything else going on in the state.
Right. So yeah, but the only criteria is that people be from, working in the city in terms of the market. And then the partner organizations, same thing, right? So it doesn't make sense that Catholic Charities is coming really, except they manage the WIC program for farmers market nutrition vouchers.
Oh,
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah. So that
Conflict of interest.
is that wild?
To a church and state thing? Yeah, no, that's a different episode. But
helpful, but
interesting.
That's interesting. So that's good, but that's good if they are managing that to come to your meeting so that they can really stay in touch.
Yeah. And they decided, and they needed help. They couldn't find farmers, it was a big thing. Where are they going to do the food distribution? How are we going to, they only had the paper vouchers. People were reticent about having paper currency, how to deal with that in a farmer's market environment. It was very helpful to have Yolanda coming from Catholic Charities because we could talk all that through, and she could bring back to the table at her end, how long before we get a digital version of these? How can this kind of move forward a little bit in that arena as well?
Yeah.
So I think, far reaching, but it's still on the groundwork, right? We got to get that little paper voucher to the mom with the kids. How the heck are we going to do it?
Yeah, just that little like micro work that we do with the broader kind of picture in mind, but doing all those little on the ground things. So it's good to be together. What kind of benefits are offered to collective members, if any, and which ones do they use? Benefits is
Well, a larger voice,
talking.
that's obvious, but what other
And
kinds of benefits?
an emotional labor outlet.
Yeah, a shoulder to cry on.
That is a good benefit. That's what we have found with Farmers Market Pros. Actually, people tell us all the time, like it's just so nice to be with people that understand.
Group therapy.
Yeah, I didn't know if there's any like official kind of benefits that you get, like with the California Alliance or with the state
Farmers Market
alliance that you
Coalition,
might get, Farmers Market Coalition.
Maybe in the future, no, there's not. I mean, really, it's just like me trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing and occasionally sucking in people like Stephanie.
I love it. It's perfect.
I said to Stephanie that we read that question. I was like, yeah, the benefit is you can volunteer your butt off if you want to for more than one organization.
Well, yeah, and the benefits are really more like how we found when we were getting shut down, and we did actually kind of group together with other market managers in our city, is that the benefit was we were all speaking in one voice to people who really did listen to us, and we really were able to push through and be able to get reopened. So the biggest benefit of all.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, it was very quick that we became a real thing.
Yeah. Awesome. So it sounds like you guys are just kind of getting together. It's not like a formal thing. I know we were going to ask you about how it's funded, but it doesn't sound like you guys are doing any kind of formal funding.
We're in the pre-venture capital stage.
I love it.
Yeah, so angel investors.
I want to know how we're funding Sheree's big salary as executive coordinator.
It's a big question.
Yeah, no, I will say that we did have like a little leadership group for a while there, but it's been such a tough season, as you guys know, that we lost a lot of our lead market people this season.
Yeah.
They just couldn't keep it. It was just, the stress was just too much. So we're a little bit in flux right now in terms of, everybody's on board, everybody's got something to do, and we get together monthly, and, we have some initiatives for 21. We will start to become funded, but right now we're just completely 100% volunteer.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's all free. There's no membership fee, and you don't have a big salary. We were joking about that.
No.
And would you say you're more focused on collective action in terms of city interaction and things, and less on marketing? I know that some collectives, farmers market collectives, are really focused on joint marketing efforts, and it sounds like you're really not pointed that way, at least at this point.
I mean, I think it's interesting, right? Because some of us, like me, I work for the organization I actually work for is a 501c3, and we cannot do any lobbying or political actions. Whereas others others in the collective group work for different kinds of organizations or are standalone, and they are, lobbying, doing political actions, things like that. So finding that sweet spot is tough, but that question about marketing and I think that is the direction that I see us heading in terms of communication, helping people understand how farmers markets can and are a source of actual food. They're not just, go have a hamburger with a fried egg on top. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I do see that as our kind of where I'm seeing us going in 21. Go ahead,
Some
Stephanie.
collective marketing kind of
Yeah, and I think just really working together to think creatively. I mean, we've all collaboratively had to think about the way we do things in 2020, and I think that energy can continue throughout and in the future, just to inspire each other and think about creative ways to redesign how we do things operationally and from the marketing perspective. Just to glean information from each other is really important.
And do you do any outreach to the public to let them know that you're a member? I mean, is there like a realtor sticker? Is there a Chicago Farmers Market Collective kind of brand that you can boast?
I think you guys are vibing right in on where we're heading as an organization, if you will. So as I think I mentioned in one of our back and forth emails, we're working with Loyola University's marketing research classes to develop maybe a comprehensive understanding of what will cut through a lot of the clutter in terms of people's thinking about farmers markets in Chicago. So we actually just finished a semester-long project. We just got the deliverables on Friday with 8 teams, I think. Was it, Stephanie? 8 teams?
Yes.
8 teams, each taking on specific area of that the collective is interested in, like marketing, digital education. What are some of the other topics? Why am I blanking out? Branding. So they did a lot of research. They've come to put this whole thing together for us to start to really try and hone in on what is the message that we want to get across? How do we want people to respond when they hear farmers market in Chicago? How do we help people understand that we're convenient food access sites? How do we get our vendors to understand that we work together and this is a happy family of people who are growing food to help make sure that our communities are healthy and strong? How do we get access to food for people who maybe can't afford to eat the food at the price point that it needs to be at in order for that business to make a go of it? So what kind of funding streams does that require? Right now, every market kind of approaches that to a certain extent on their own. Maybe there needs to be a collective-wide initiative to make that food access piece more comprehensive and understandable, so that you're, a shopper who needs to, who's on SNAP benefits, knows that at Stephanie's Market and Sheree's Market and Kat's Market, everybody, you're going to get a double dollar matching grant. It's going to be for this amount of money, not to flatten it and make it boring, but just so that it's not a question. Like every people got to call you up and say, do you give grants for this? Do you do that? Do you have corn? So trying to really kind of make a comprehensive network of clarity around what farmers markets mean to the city of Chicago.
And I think that's really important. I do also think that that's where collective efforts sometimes fall down, because as you say, your only criteria is that that a market is in the city of Chicago. And I know that when we've gotten into cooperative stuff, sometimes it's gotten into, I don't want my sign that says I'm a member of that group to be on this guy's market because he's got 7 kettle corn vendors, So it's making sure that if you're branding together, that you have common kind of criteria, and curating philosophies and things can get really tricky. So I'm going to tell you guys that you're doing a great job. I'm impressed that you're on the path. It sounds like you've got a little ways to go. And we will hopefully get back to that proposal and we'll work it out and make it work, since we've already announced that we'll be hearing from you folks at Intense the Farmers Market Conference. Let's just see if we can design a presentation that makes that happen.
And then you have to tell us all your secrets for getting the city to tow the cars off the street.
That's right. That's going to be the actionable moment.
The trick is
pay them.
I'll have to tell you another time. I don't know.
That'll be your little carrot that you're using.
We'll do that in
my best trick
the
was
private confines of the conference.
Friendly police officers who look up your license plate number and then go to your house and ring your doorbell and wake you up at 6 o'clock in the morning and say your car's parked illegally.
Wouldn't you rather have that happen than be towed, though? I mean, that's,
we've had officers do that at our market too, but it's like some of them will do that and some of them will say, no, I'm not doing that. So it's
it'd
like
be nice to have an actual
the consistency
policy.
is key. Yes, people are always very appreciative of that.
Yeah. So it's been a pleasure hearing from you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us.
Isn't this smart of us to
thank
use?
you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Stephanie. I thought this was really clever of us to use Tent Talk to expand on the idea of what this kind of presentation would look like and to help me do my evaluation process on our RFPs. That's right. Yeah, so it's been really terrific. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Talk to you
Thank
soon.
you so much.
Appreciate it. Bye, you guys.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Farmers markets are all about community, and all of us, operators, farmers, and vendors, keep learning. To learn what's happening from people just like you in various parts of the country, or share what's happening in your area, we have terrific conversations and people sharing resources over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Please find us there, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join the group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros, or send us an email at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. If you're just getting started in farmers markets, check out our Vendor 101 online course, and to go deeper, register for our annual Intense the Farmers Market Conference, live online, March 15th through 18th, 2021. Learn more at farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks so much for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you access your podcasts, and tell us and others how you're enjoying Tent Talk. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss our next episode. Tent Talk, the Farmers Market Podcast, is proudly produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening today, and we'll have another great episode next week. Tune in.